Let's dive right in, because folks may know your passion for sports, but I'm not sure everybody knows where that comes from, in that you were also a certified baller. So can you tell us a little bit about your background in sports?
Yeah, thank you. Like probably many of you in the room, I grew up moving my body in a myriad of ways. I was a dancer, I rode horses, I skied, I played tennis, soccer, and basketball. I ended up making the under-23 national soccer team, was recruited to play at Stanford, was all-state in basketball, which was really my love, but I'm the runt in our family, and my dad was my coach, and he really pushed soccer on me. And, you know, unlike kids today, I got to play 3 varsity sports all 4 years of high school.
Wow.
And I was allowed to do one for this season and one for the next season and one for the other. And I didn't burn out. And I was so excited, you know, I didn't want to leave the season I was in because I loved the sport I was playing, but then I got into the new one and I had so much fun, and then I didn't want to leave that. So that is the world that I wish, not that everybody has to play that many, you know, sports or that many varsity sports for that matter, starting as a freshman, but the world that I wish for our children is that they have a myriad of ways to move their bodies and calm their minds and be team players. And not be limited because of costs, because of time, because of pressures to specialize at age 8, which we're seeing increasingly. And as a mother of 4 kids, my youngest just turned 9, 11, 13, and 15, I have firsthand experience, like so many of you, in recognizing that we're depriving our kids by putting so much pressure on them to conform at the youngest of ages. We're seeing more and more injuries that I already had 2 of my kids out for 4 months this year because of repetitive stress injuries, stress fractures in my daughter's back at the end of volleyball season, high school volleyball, that she missed the entire basketball season. And then my other daughter has osteochondritis dissecans, which is like collapsed cartilage in her knee from volleyball, and has already been out for 2 months.
Say that 5 times fast.
I know.
Okay.
I probably said it wrong. So forgive me for any of you medics in the room. But the point is, like, we've got to check that. Like, this is not good for our children. And of course, I'm like, you know, my body's injured, and one of the reasons I ended up stopping playing soccer was disc problems in my neck and back. But I got to live my childhood through team sports and all the benefits of being on team sports and building confidence and all the myriad of benefits of being active. And I already have my just turned 9-year-old son saying, I only want to do this one sport. Because even though he's on the top ranked team in Northern California in soccer, he thinks that because maybe he's better in this other sport that he has to specialize, because his teammates on the soccer team, the majority of them are specializing.
Right.
And he's trying to do it all and realizes he can't. And so we already quit flag football because it was too much doing multiple competitive sports. Anyway, I'm sharing this just because I think it's important to share stories, because I see how the system's broken, and my kids are already suffering from it, and I don't want another generation of kids to suffer from it.
Yeah, there's so many things that you've said that I want to dive into over the course of the next 20 minutes that we have together. But we started off our sessions today by hearing from Steph and Ayesha Curry early on. And even Steph Curry, the greatest shooter ever, at least on the NBA side, has shown us that he played other sports growing up. He played baseball, he played soccer, he tried his hand at a bunch of different things. And so I wonder if kids looking at their icons and seeing a myriad of sports be modeled to them, if that's something that we still need to model for kids. Who was that person for you? Did you have an athlete that you looked up to growing up?
I did have athletes I looked up to, but I'm just trying to think. I don't know that I knew they played other sports, but I loved Steffi Graf, and I loved Martina and Chris Everett. I loved Peggy Fleming, because I was also a dancer, as I shared, and I tried to be an ice skater for a hot second, and then they shut down the rink near our house. And sadly, and Michael Jordan, right? But I'm like, I wasn't exposed to all of the incredible athletes that young women are exposed to today, given soccer and basketball and beach volleyball and all that. So I think kids have more and more, girls in particular have more women to inspire them. But I love that the Currys brought this up. Like, if we could remind those kids, which I'm trying to do more and more of, that LeBron James was like an amazing football player.
Incredible.
Curry was, that they all had their other sports and they didn't necessarily specialize until a certain age. That would give more kids confidence to just keep trying different things.
Yeah, and you've identified I don't know how you do it all, a mom of 4, trying to keep everybody in multiple sports, not to mention being the first partner of California. But when you're talking about the issues that you see rearing their ugly heads even now, one of them that you mentioned was rising costs. And I want to dive into that a little bit first, because the Aspen report, it shows that youth sports, the cost has risen 46% just since 2019. That is twice the rate of inflation.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is, and what do you think that prohibits kids from?
Well, it's because people say if you want to get into a growing industry and make money, you get into youth sports, right? One of the cost to families is, for example, this weekend, my son was in a soccer tournament in Turlock, which is 2 hours from our house. 2 games on Saturday and like potentially 2 on Sunday. And in a family with more than one child, one parent is driving that kid, and maybe because it's 2 hours there and 2 hours back, decides we want to spend the night. So then you have a hotel, and then you have all the food costs. But maybe they can't afford that, so they're going back and forth, but then you have gas prices. But this is just to be on a competitive soccer team. My daughter, we left at 5:30 on Sunday morning for a volleyball tournament. She got home at 10:45 p.m. So volleyball was that. And again, you're eating food there. I mean, I packed her breakfast and everything, and of course she returned it, and she was like, well, I didn't know. And I was like, did you look in the bag?
Right, exactly.
but then you're consuming whatever food is at that place or nearby. So again, those costs. Anyway, I share that because, again, I think the system it does not work for working families. The costs of entering and being a part of these clubs are increasing. I think a friend of ours whose daughter plays competitive volleyball shared at one point that the family was $20,000 in a year for her daughter to play competitive volleyball. Wow. $20,000. That means you have to make like $30,000 to $40,000 just to pay for your kid to do that. That's not, that is an obstacle for too many families. And again, it's also disruptive because as kids are, playing at higher and more competitive levels, they have pressure at school academically. If they're traveling all of these weekends, this is the piece for me that really bums me out, is families should not be traveling out of state and even hours beyond an hour in state when, on a weekend basis. Like, that's not healthy for family dynamics. No wonder your kids are addicted to video games or the iPad, because they're so amped up from these sports that when they come down, they just want to numb out or they're exhausted. So anyway, I just think we need a real pattern interrupt.
Yeah.
We need to go back to local. We need to go back to kids playing rec sports, but like skilled rec sports, play-based, where they're building confidence, building skills, building, growing as a team player at their school or at their local rec center, so that it works for local families, isn't highly expensive. But I was in Germany this summer with a friend, and they'd invited my son to come and join the local club, soccer club there, to and this group of boys that were traveling to play youth soccer. And this particular club that was under Bayern Munich, they pay, each kid's family pays like €35 a month. They get their jerseys, they have 3 or 4 practices a week, great training, they get to play in their tournaments. Everything's really paid for.
Yeah.
And it's skill-based, and we don't have anything like that in our country, right? The place that you go to where you have your cohort, your team members, you're building skills, you're building confidence, you're becoming a more successful in a particular sport, or the Nordic version, right, where kids and adults alike are playing together and trying out different things and not really keeping score and not allowed to specialize until they're 13.
Right.
I think we just really need to rethink what we're doing, because I think we're driving kids out of sports, forcing them to specialize. And I mean, I will say, already my 11-year-old daughter has said to me, she made this top volleyball team, and she was talking about all of her friends at school who already quit volleyball because this particular club was burning the girls out. So if it's not an injury, the kids are burnt out. And that's not okay, because we want them to continue, again, to move their bodies until they're of a certain, or to always, throughout their life, be playing, but not have to specialize in sports until they're maybe, I would argue, like a sophomore or junior in high school.
Right. There's so many things as you were talking that made me want to stop and pause on. One of them being when you're talking about the prohibitive costs to play these organized sports. Oftentimes, and yet at the same time wanting kids not to specialize, oftentimes, particularly in underrepresented communities, something that I have heard time and time again in the NBA is, I saw basketball, a player saying this, as their way out of a certain situation, meaning we need to specialize because we need to be able to put ourselves in a better economic place as a family in order to even get to then the opportunity for the next generation of kids not to have to specialize in sports, let alone put food on the table and all these different stuff. It's a cycle that needs to be broken.
Yes.
And the Aspen Institute and Project Play is doing some of that work. I was talking with our friend Tom very earlier about trips that he's taken to other parts of the world where this isn't an issue, whereas you're sort of mentioning there is programs that are put on by whether it's states or countries to help kids stay and get into sports at a better cost.
Yes.
Why do you think we are so adverse, not just in California, but it's an American problem, to buying into that model?
So I think because we're such an individualistic country, and we forget that the collective actually is what matters and what's going to get us through dark times and trying times, and that we actually need everyone to be successful. It can't just be about me. Sadly, we have a philosophy of leadership that's in power right now that is so much about the individual and unfettered capitalism that I think it is win at all cost, and that is so dangerous. And so I think, like, what are kids learning? What are families learning? I mean, more and more I feel like I see that families are out for themselves, but that's not who they really are as humans, but they think they have to be that way because it's become sort of the American ethos, and that's what's in leadership right now, to a fault. And so, again, I'm not trying to be political, but I do think culturally that we will be healthier as a society, like when we are more connected to rebuilding local communities and lifting everybody up, because you can only, I mean, and again, this is, I think there's a role for individualism and there's a role for individual sports. I tend to prefer team sports, but I think we need both, right? But I do think we have to check and question sort of what's driving us and what we're really getting out of in perpetuating a system like this. And I'm guilty of it. The one thing I'm proud of is I coached my son in CYO basketball recently, and I coached with a former girlfriend who went to Cal.
I love that.
And she played tennis at Cal, and she and I coached our boys, and it was so much fun, and it was all skills-based and play-based, and I wish I could, replicate her and what we created in communities across this state and country, because we both, had enough to teach the kids while making it fun, and also having it be competitive enough that the parents felt like it was worth their while, and it cost, next to nothing compared to the more expensive other programs that our kids be forced into. So, I say I'm part of the problem because my kids are playing certain competitive sports right now because they're not often offered at a certain caliber at the local level. But I really want to flip that. I feel like we need to disrupt the system and bring everything back locally so that, we all have more sanity around it. Families aren't split up on weekends going in different directions. People aren't mortgaging, having to refinance their home to pay for their kids' sports career. Right. And so anyway, I have hope because I think there's enough conversation around this, like we're having it right now, you all are doing this, there's a lot of research around it, that we can change the system, but we have to be dogged and committed to it because we're up against the obstacle of unfettered capitalism in our country that is also about the individual and not thinking enough about the fact that we can all rise together, right? There's no leak on your side of my boat, it's our boat, and we're all going to rise together.
In that spirit, I'm wondering your assessment of some of the work of Project Play, and specifically this theory that Project Play has, the change for sports in America that resonates with you, especially they're working to establish sports as a human right of all children.
Yes.
What do you think about that?
It is a human right, it is necessary, 100%, and I mean, it parallels, again, it's why I'm so grateful to partner on 25 by 25 and the coaches challenge to get more coaches socialized into this positive sports culture. I think, it's one of the reasons my office in particular, we're coming out with and our partners at the California Partners Project are coming out with a whole tech life balance series to get kids off devices and moving their bodies in a myriad of ways. It's one of the reasons my office is, through the Governor's Advisory Council on Physical Fitness and Mental Well-Being, is so committed to moving, we've launched the Move Your Body, Calm Your Mind campaign, but through our advisory board, we're making it really simple and have a guidebook and a roadmap for schools in particular, but to help children again, practice daily mindfulness, breath work, all of that, while at the same time exposing Californians to the myriad of ways that they can be physically active and play and develop different skills. So I think the partnerships that are going on here are what are essential to transform this culture, because I think it's in need of transformation so that sports can be what we know they are. Yeah. Right? Inspiring, community building, healing, right? Yeah. And I mean, because that's what it was. That's what sports were for me. They were my guiding star, and they got me through tricky times in my life. And every child should have that, and every family should have that. And I can't imagine life without sports. And so, and I know that there's something in there for every child. It's just about unlocking their interests and passions and their potential, and not shaming them into thinking that there isn't a place for them. Absolutely. One of the things that I love about sports is there is a place for everybody. It's one of sort of the few places, it seems, in a more and more divided society that every person from every walk of life can come, and whether you are playing for the same team, rooting on the same team, it's something where everything else falls away. And that doesn't mean you don't show up as a woman, as a black person, as someone who is part of the LGBTQ community, but it does mean you are also showing up alongside other people who are different than you with a common goal, even if that common goal is as simple as go Golden State Warriors, whatever that looks like, right? We are
whoa, I don't know where the last 20 minutes have gone. I do want to end on this because I think it's going to segue well into the next session that we have as well. The role of government in terms of the regulations. You mentioned, of course, California is working to have smartphones out of schools by 2026. What is the role of local government in particular in uplifting kids and encouraging them back into sport and back into dialogue, I think, in a lot of ways, because that's where you have these conversations on the playground and on sports teams?
Yeah. The role of government, I think, is there is a regulation piece and then there's an incentive piece. And I think we have to make things easier for children and easier for families, which is, again, why I go back to the local model. Kids should not be driving at 8, 9, 10 years old. They should not be driving 2 hours every weekend to play their sport. They should not have to have wealthy parents that can fly them to Arizona or Florida to play their sport. Like, that is insane. There's enough talent in California. We are the 5th largest economy in the world. We have the largest population. We're the most diverse state. Like, we have enough talent here to have enough friendly competition to, skill our children up and, again, build future leaders through sports. So I think it's a bit of the chicken and egg or cat and mouse. Like, I think there's a dance, but I think, regulation can be necessary at times. I'm also a big proponent of incentives and culture-based solutions and showing what's possible through storytelling and through just opening hearts and minds. Because I think there's enough chatter out there. And again, it could just be because I'm a busy working mom with 4 kids and I think the whole system's like messed up. But I think I'm not alone, right? And because I talked to a mom who is from Texas, and she was saying that youth volleyball had stolen her children's childhood. And I was like, and it had stolen her family time. And she's like, I want that back. And I will say, I do get pissed when it's like, there's a volleyball tournament on Mother's Day. Right. Or, I want to take my kids on a hike. That's like one of my big initiatives out of the First Partners Office is like, we've done, a lot of work with state parks to create library passes so parks are free for families because they're your parks. They're not our parks, they're yours. You should be able to, have access to them for free, and it's a great family bonding thing. So I want to, I'm like maybe a parents' rights advocate or family rights advocate. I want families to better benefit from, government. I think that's where regulation maybe comes in, or again, incentive-based storytelling. And I think right now we're making it harder on families because they think they have to keep their kids spinning on this hamster wheel. And how many of the kids are going to play college sports? How many of them are going to go to the Olympics? Right. And again, I want to see success, and we want to breed success. But again, I think it's the beauty of like the Norwegian model is they see it in a kid at 13, and then they invest in that kid. Whereas we're so stupid, we tell everyone that they can be it. And maybe we just need to keep those kids doing a lot of different things because there might be some other talent there that could lead to something else in their life that would make them so successful. Like, instead we sort of pigeonhole them. And so I think it's about choice and opportunity, but again, writing a narrative that works for working families, which the majority of us are, dual income or single parent households, and which also relates to getting costs down and bringing the play and the joy back, which is really what sports are all about. Absolutely, bringing the joy back, I think, is sort of the bottom line. The first partner of California, Jennifer Siebel Newsom, everybody. Thank you so much for the time. Thank you. Thanks so much. Thank you.